In her civil lawsuit, Cassie said that she was the victim of abuse, assault, and at the hands of Diddy.
We are not done, and that Combs did not do this alone. Do you foresee that there could be other charges related to this case?
I'm not taking anything off the table.
It was the kind of silence that could shatter eardrums. A courtroom packed with reporters, spectators, and legal teams waiting in uneasy anticipation as Janice Combs, Diddy's own mother, made her way to the stand. When she took her seat, the room felt frozen in time, every eye locked on the woman who, for decades, had been seen as Diddy's fiercest protector. Yet here she was, about to deliver testimony that would, in an instant, strip the music mogul of his carefully constructed image and expose the shadowy empire that had been rumored for years.
I thought Diddy would be throwing all his celebrity mates under the bus.
I mean, that could potentially be coming when it's time for court and when it's time for him to testify. But what we're seeing right now is how important public relations really are to Sean Combs. He's desperately trying to control the narrative behind bars, allowing his attorneys to do documentaries.
Diddy sat motionless, his jaw tight, his hands gripping the edge of the defense table. The flashes of cameras outside the courthouse had seemed endless earlier, but none of that compared to the tension inside now. As Janice adjusted the microphone in front of her, one wouldn't have been surprised if she could feel her son's eyes burning into her. This was no ordinary mother and son fallout. This was betrayal on a scale that could rewrite the story of Sean Diddy Combs forever. And when she began to speak, her words were sharper than any lawyer's cross-examination.
What his team is trying to do is get the public to assume that the government is leaking some of this negative information about him, like that Cassie video. But the reality is, he's got a lot of enemies.
What makes a mother turn against her own child? That unspoken question hung in the air as Janice's voice, steady but laced with emotion, filled the room. She described moments most parents would never dare to admit, recounting private conversations with her son that hinted at a man who had long blurred the lines between ambition and destruction. He told me once, she began, her voice cracking slightly, that the world is full of people who need to be used. That's how business works. He said, "Mom, sometimes people get hurt. It's just business." The collective gasp that followed was almost deafening. Diddy, the man who had built an untouchable empire of music, fashion, and fame, now appeared in an entirely different light. This wasn't the charming mogul flashing his million-dollar smile at the BET Awards. This was a man accused of viewing people, friends, colleagues, even family as pawns in his relentless pursuit of power. Janice's words cut through the courtroom air like a knife, peeling back the layers of a persona that had been meticulously crafted for decades.
That was all the people that went to the puffy parties. That was all the people that did all those things thinking that there was never going to be a consequence for what they were doing. Got punked out and pimped out by some greater desire. You shouldn't have a greater desire than being a man. So I believe that's a big problem with a lot of the actors out there because they get fluid. And next thing you know, once you go fluid, you...
And then, like an unexpected thunderclap, she dropped a revelation that sent murmurs rippling through the crowd. She hinted at the existence of what some have ominously referred to as Diddy's blackmail archive, a secret trove of incriminating footage, documents, and recordings reportedly seized during federal raids on his properties. I didn't believe it at first, she confessed, her hands trembling slightly. But when I saw what they uncovered, I couldn't stay silent anymore. Could this archive be the key to why she was speaking out now, after years of unwavering loyalty? Was this the moment Janice realized the true depth of the empire her son had built, a kingdom fortified by exploitation, manipulation, and fear? It's a chilling thought, but one that couldn't be ignored as her testimony unfolded. Diddy's legal team exchanged frantic whispers, but the damage was already done.
No, I get it. So you see some guys struggling with that. You see Bieber struggling with that. You see some of these guys struggling with that.
They can't get it out of their head. They can't get it out of their head.
And then came the darkest twist yet, the connection to his infamous freak-off parties. For years, these events had been whispered about in industry circles, extravagant, exclusive gatherings with tales of blurred boundaries and questionable behavior. Many dismissed the rumors as exaggerated or baseless, but now, under oath, Janice painted a picture that was impossible to ignore. She spoke of times she visited Diddy's homes during these events, recalling disoriented women and restricted areas guarded by staff. "I saw things I didn't want to see," she admitted quietly. "I told myself it wasn't my place to ask questions. I was his mother. I wanted to believe he wasn't doing anything wrong." The courtroom was silent again, but this time, the weight of her words seemed almost unbearable. Did she suspect the truth all along? Had she chosen to stay silent out of love for her son, only to now watch as the walls of his empire crumbled under the weight of its own secrets? Or was she, as some speculated, motivated by something else entirely? Perhaps her own survival, as rumors swirled about people in Diddy's orbit being silenced when they knew too much. As her testimony continued, Janice's voice grew steadier, her resolve sharper. She described her growing unease over the years, particularly as allegations and lawsuits began piling up against her son. There were too many coincidences, she said, her tone cold and matter-of-fact. Too many women coming forward, too many stories that sounded the same.
Did you ever have the opportunity where you got invited and you said no to it?
Hell yeah.
What was the consequences when you said no?
Puffy invited me for weeks, asking me to come and teach him how to, wanted me to be his acting coach for a while. Go there and he's sitting around just looking. I'm like, okay, what's the material you want to work on? He's just looking at it.
The tension in the room reached a boiling point when Janice was asked about her knowledge of the federal raids that uncovered alleged evidence of Diddy's exploits. While she remained careful not to reveal too much, likely under advice from her own legal counsel, she didn't deny the existence of certain items reportedly found on his properties. It wasn't just the allegations of exploitation that were shocking. It was the scale. FBI agents had reportedly seized thousands of items, from documents to video recordings during their investigation. Whispers of these trophies had circulated for months, and now, with Janice's testimony, those whispers felt more like screams. What else was in that archive? What kind of power had Diddy wielded over those around him, and for how long?
Look at Diddy, for instance. Mm-hmm. Let's take a look at him. Mm-hmm. Let's take a look at. He has videos. He has videos of the parties. Now, what I've heard, which I don't know how much of it is in mainstream media, I don't really follow the story that much, but what I've heard from friends that are attorneys, friends of mine that have represented me before, agents and so on, is there's a bidding war going on right now.
At this point, the focus shifted to Diddy's infamous gatherings, which some described as debauched spectacles. Janice mentioned how these parties weren't just about indulgence, they were about control. There were rooms no one could enter unless they had his permission, she revealed. And there were people, women, who didn't look like they wanted to be there. Her words sent chills through the courtroom. Was this the final piece of the puzzle that tied Diddy's personal life to the criminal enterprise he now stood accused of running? For years, Diddy had carried himself as untouchable, a man whose charisma and success shielded him from scrutiny. But as Janice continued to speak, a darker portrait emerged. She described a son who had learned early on how to manipulate those around him, who seemed to thrive on bending others to his will. And yet, her testimony raised as many questions as it answered. How much did she know? And why now, after decades of unwavering public support, was she choosing to speak out?
Same thing for Jeffrey Epstein. Now, the interesting thing about the Epstein and the theory about Epstein is we know he filmed people, for sure, on that island. He has a lot of movies, a lot of films of people that are very, very powerful political figures and entertainers, business people. So do you really believe that Jeffrey Epstein himself? Of
course not.
Of course not. Yeah.
The speculation didn't end there. Janice's testimony hinted at deeper fractures within the Combs family. She spoke of strained relationships, of times when her son's behavior had pushed even those closest to him away. And then there was the lawsuit involving the alleged coercion of Kirk Burroughs, the former president of Bad Boy Entertainment, who claimed Diddy had used violence and intimidation to seize control of the label. Janice's name had surfaced in those allegations too, with some suggesting she had played a role in orchestrating the scheme. Was her testimony an attempt to distance herself from the fallout, or was she genuinely trying to make amends for years of silence?
Did you ever spend time with the guy? Did you ever meet Diddy?
I've met him before, yeah.
How was he?
Very nice guy, very smart, super business. He's very successful.
As the day wore on, the courtroom buzzed with speculation. Reporters scribbled furiously, trying to capture every detail of Janice's damning revelations. And yet, the most unnerving part of her testimony wasn't what she said. It was what she didn't say. There was a sense that she was holding back, that there were still secrets too explosive to reveal. What else did she know? And how much more was she willing to share as the trial unfolded? For Diddy, this was more than a legal battle. It was a fight for his legacy, for his very identity. But as his mother's testimony tore through the carefully constructed facade he had spent decades building, one thing became clear. The truth, whatever it was, could no longer be contained. And as the courtroom adjourned for the day, the question on everyone's mind was simple. How much darker could this story get?
People I don't think realized was he had cameras all over the place, unbeknownst to them. And now he has all that footage, supposedly. This is what I'm told. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens if, You're a huge iconic, TV star or movie star, and you're in some very, very...
But if Janice's testimony against her son sent shockwaves through the courtroom, it was the ripple effects outside those walls that began to truly shake the foundation of the Combs family legacy. Because let's be honest, if a mother could take the stand and dismantle the empire her son spent decades building, what does that say about the rest of the family? Were they complicit? Silent enablers? Or, as some rumors suggest, active participants in a much larger and darker operation? The question now isn't just about Diddy's guilt. It's about whether the entire Combs dynasty was built on a web of secrets, lies, and intimidation. This brings us to Kirk Burroughs, the former co-founder of Bad Boy Entertainment, a man who has been fighting a legal battle of his own for years. His lawsuit is shocking enough on its surface. He alleges Diddy forced him out of the label in the mid-90s through a violent confrontation involving a baseball bat and a coerced signature. But here's where things get even murkier. Burroughs claims Janice herself played a pivotal role in orchestrating the entire scheme. Think about that for a moment. Janice, who stood by her son's side at award shows, who was celebrated as the matriarch of the Combs family, is now being accused of helping to consolidate power within one of the most influential labels in music history at someone else's expense.
I don't know this, but it just seems very suspicious when you go through and you look at in the history of different people that can make you go away if listen, I've worried about some of the things that I talk about on my show.
The details are chilling. Burroughs alleges that after Diddy forced him to sign over his shares under duress, those shares were quietly transferred to Janice. On paper, she wasn't even in the room when it happened, but Burroughs insists she was the mastermind behind the scenes, steering the takeover while maintaining a facade of innocence. And let's not forget, this isn't just about money. Burroughs has claimed that the Combs family actively sabotaged his career, blacklisted him from the industry, and left him financially destitute, living in shelters across New York City. If these allegations hold any truth, it raises an uncomfortable question. Has Janice been protecting her son all these years, or has she been protecting herself? Was her courtroom testimony a calculated move to distance herself from the fallout as the walls close in on Diddy? Of course, this isn't the only mystery hanging over this case. There's also the haunting disappearance of victim 3, one of the key witnesses who was supposed to testify against Diddy. Federal prosecutors have admitted they can't locate her, and her attorney has gone radio silent. What's even more unsettling is the timing. Victim 3 was reportedly prepared to share very personal and explosive details about her experiences, details that prosecutors believed would establish a long-term pattern of abuse and coercion. But now, she's vanished. Was it fear that drove her into hiding? Or is there something far more sinister at play?
Attorneys say that this is the first time that they've met since 2018 when she attended the funeral for Kim Porter, which is the mother of Sean Combs' 3 children. So to watch Sean Combs watching her was really interesting because they haven't seen each other in at least 6 years. But he can't say anything. This is a moment for him where he has to be silent. And right now we're hearing what she says in terms of what happened during the course of their over 10-year relationship.
It's impossible to ignore the eerie coincidences surrounding victim 3's disappearance, especially considering the high-profile nature of this case. Some sources have speculated that her vanishing act could be linked to a broader pattern of missing or silenced voices within Diddy's orbit. Over the years, several former employees and associates have come forward with alarming stories of being pressured into signing non-disclosure agreements under duress, often accompanied by veiled threats of financial ruin or even physical harm. One former bodyguard, who spoke anonymously, claimed that Diddy's team had a methodical approach to ensuring loyalty. Those who didn't comply were removed from the equation. Could victim 3 have been caught up in this shadowy system of control? And then there's the question of evidence. Federal agents reportedly seized mountains of material during their raids on Diddy's properties earlier this year. Among the items collected were hard drives, private recordings, and detailed logs of events hosted at his homes. While much of this evidence remains sealed under court order, insiders have hinted at the disturbing nature of what was discovered. Some have even suggested that these materials could implicate not just Diddy, but other high-profile figures in the entertainment world. If this is true, it raises the stakes of the trial exponentially. Was victim 3 silenced because her testimony could connect the dots between these pieces of evidence and the alleged criminal network?
Is he showing any reaction to what she is saying on the stand?
I can tell you that immediately, the moment she opened her mouth, you could see that Combs was listening intently to everything that she has to say, as well as those jurors. People know that she was that star witness, the key person in all of this. When you think about that civil suit that came out in 2023, that was settled the day after, she really is the person that connects all the dots.
The growing conspiracy theories don't stop there. Internet sleuths and amateur investigators have pointed to a strange pattern in Diddy's legal battles. The sudden withdrawal of lawsuits, settlements reached under mysterious circumstances, and key witnesses who seem to fade from the spotlight. In one high-profile example, a former staff member who had accused Diddy of abusive behavior abruptly recanted their story after receiving an undisclosed payout. These instances have fueled speculation that there's a deliberate effort to keep certain truths from ever reaching the courtroom. Could this be what's happening with victim 3? And if so, how far does this cover-up extend? Let's not forget the rumors surrounding Diddy's so-called blackmail archive. Whispers of this secret collection of recordings, photos, and documents have been circulating for years, with some alleging it was used to control and silence those who could pose a threat to his empire. Could this be why victim 3 disappeared? Did someone get to her before she could take the stand? The very thought sends chills down our spines. And it's not just her. How many others might be out there, too afraid to come forward, knowing what could happen if they did?
And again, just to reiterate what is a freak-off, the freak-off essentially was something that Cassie said she learned about through Sean Combs about a year into their relationship. He described it as voyeurism, wanting to watch her have sex with someone else. And she said that she did it because she was 22, 21, she was young, she didn't know any better, and that she wanted to please Sean Combs.
This shadowy network of control is something that has followed Diddy's career from the beginning. Former employees, industry insiders, and even ex-partners have spoken, often anonymously, about the atmosphere of fear that surrounded him. Loyalty, it seems, wasn't just expected, it was enforced. But as more people step into the light, it's becoming clearer that this isn't just about one man's actions. It's about the system he created to protect himself. One that may now be unraveling faster than anyone could have predicted. And then there's Cassie, whose explosive lawsuit last year was the first domino to fall in this scandal. While her claims of abuse and coercion rocked the music world, there's one detail that has everyone buzzing: the rumor of her secret diary. Yes, you heard that right. Sources close to the case have hinted at the existence of a journal Cassie kept during her years with Diddy, a journal that could contain first-hand accounts of the darkest moments in their relationship. If this diary exists, it could be the smoking gun that ties together the allegations of manipulation, control, and abuse. Could it also hold secrets that even Janice doesn't know? Is this what Janice fears most? That her son's former partner might expose the full extent of what went on behind closed doors?
And that is speaking to the psychological abuse, in addition to the physical abuse that she potentially experienced as well.
She's definitely laying out someone who was young, who was influenced by wanting to have this record career. She signed a 10-album deal with Bad Boy Entertainment, led by Sean Combs, and basically describes being enamored by Sean.
The courtroom, meanwhile, has become a theater of tension. Diddy sits pale and visibly shaken, his once unshakable confidence replaced by what can only be described as dread. As Janice's words echo through the room, it's clear that her testimony isn't just a blow to his defense, it's a signal to others that it's safe to come forward. Already, whispers are growing about more victims, more insiders, and more revelations waiting just around the corner. And if this is what we're seeing in the early stages of the trial, we have to wonder, how much more is still hidden in the shadows of Diddy's empire? But this isn't just about Diddy, it's about a culture of power, privilege, and impunity that has allowed figures like him to thrive for decades. It's about the people who were silenced, the lives that were derailed, and the truth that was buried under layers of wealth and influence. And now, as the cracks in that foundation widen, the question isn't whether Diddy's legacy will survive, it's whether the entire industry will be forced to reckon with its darkest secret.
What I thought was also interesting is she said that after that first freak-off, she said she felt dirty. She didn't want to do it. And when she brought up the idea of having a conversation about the freak-offs in an email, which the jurors saw, she said she backpedaled in the email because Combs responded by saying, "I know, you don't want to do it." And she said, "Oh no, well, it's not that." But that was the beginning. That was in
So where does this leave us? If Janice's testimony is just the beginning, what other bombshells are waiting to drop? Will victim 3 resurface? Or has she been silenced for good? And what about Cassie's rumored diary? Could it be the key to unlocking the full scope of Diddy's alleged actions? One thing is certain, this story is far from over. The chains of loyalty are breaking, the walls are closing in, and the truth is clawing its way to the surface. What do you think is coming next? Could this be the moment the music industry's biggest secrets are finally exposed? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe because trust us, you won't want to miss the next chapter in this unraveling scandal. Until next time, stay curious, stay bold, and we'll see you soon.